The Chinese economy continues to slow down, with dim prospects in the job market. Many young people are unable to find jobs and end up breaking down in tears. Long-term unemployment also makes it difficult for them to find stable housing, sometimes even leading to homelessness. Life becomes difficult and helpless. The pockets of ordinary people are truly empty, and their outlook for the future is increasingly bleak. My husband accumulated debts for over 3 million yuan. After that, I cried until my eyes almost went blind. He was in the restaurant business, and the first restaurant was too successful. The first fortune came too easily, so he became overconfident and kept opening new stores. However, with the pandemic for 3 years, frequent lockdowns in Zhengzhou, Henan made it impossible to survive. That's why we ended up with so much debt. At that time, I was pregnant with our third child, buying maternity clothes for 19.9 yuan. When I swiped my card, there wasn't enough balance. It was only then that my husband told me about the debt. I could only endure the pain and sorrow. After the child was born, my heart was already dead. I just didn't want to live anymore, but I couldn't bear to leave my 3 children. Blinded by tears is something I've only seen in TV dramas, but I truly experienced the pain of crying until I was blinded. In the video, the woman's husband died of a brain tumor at the age of 35, and her mother-in-law suffered a stroke and became paralyzed. She had to bring her 2 young children with her to work and shoulder debts of 380,000 yuan. She has to earn money to repay the debt and raise the children alone, which is very overwhelming for her. Recently, a piece of news shocked the global financial circle. Between 2022 and 2023, China printed about 54 trillion yuan. However, what's even more confusing is that such a massive injection of money into the market seems to have no positive impact on people's lives. According to the latest government data, the M2 broad money supply in China amounted to over 292 trillion yuan. At the end of December 2022, M2 was 266 trillion yuan. So in 2023, an additional 26 trillion yuan was issued, and in 2022, an additional 28 trillion yuan was issued, totaling 54 trillion yuan over the 2 years. The news quickly sparked heated discussions online, with people speculating where the money went. However, upon closer observation, whether it's prices, housing prices, or stock prices, they're all falling as if in an economic vortex. So where did the money go? Generally, excessive insurance of currency leads to inflation. However, looking at China's consumer price index in January this year, not only is there no inflation, but deflationary pressure is increasing. Data shows that in January 2024, China's national CPI fell by 0.8% year-on-year, marking the largest decline since September 2009. This is mainly due to the decline in food prices, with pork prices falling by 17%. Prior to this, CPI had negative growth for 3 consecutive months from October to December 2023. The data indicates that mainland China's domestic demand is weak, consumer purchasing power continues to decline, and economic recovery after the pandemic is difficult. Not only are pork prices falling, but the data shows a general decline in food, tobacco, alcohol, transportation, and telecommunication. This shows that everyone is tightening their belts and living frugally. A blogger, Zhang, who specializes in finance and taxation as well as equity design, mentioned that China's economy has entered a state of deflation. Deflation's impact on the economy is much greater than inflation. While 3% inflation is normal, right now it is not even at 1%, and it's still declining. Things were supposed to become more expensive, but we can only resort to lowering prices. If everything is discounted, who will still buy goods? With reduced purchasing, the economy will definitely deflate. When deflation occurs, and layoffs follows. With layoffs, people lose their wages. Without wages, there's no consumption. With decreased consumption, products pile up, leading to further deflation. So China is stuck in a continuous vicious cycle. In economics, there is a saying, if inflation is a severe cold, deflation is akin to cancer. This indicates the severity of deflation. Now let's look at housing prices. China's real estate market has always been a significant pillar of the economy. However, even with a significant increase in the money supply, it hasn't helped boost the real estate market. This is very puzzling because logistically, more money should lead to rising house prices. So did this extra money flow into real estate market? To rescue the Chinese property market, the Chinese government has gradually introduced saving measures, including lifting home purchase restrictions and multiple reductions in mortgage rates. However, these have failed to prevent the continued deterioration of the real estate market. Next, let's consider stock prices. The stock market is usually an indicator of economic development and capital flow. Surprisingly, despite China printing a large amount of money, the stock market's performance remains sluggish. Not long ago, the People's Bank of China announced a 0.5% reduction in the reserve requirement ratio starting from February 5th, expected to release up to 1 trillion yuan into the market. Yet, it still couldn't save the weak stock market. China's A-share market Shanghai Composite Index has been stuck at around 3,000 points for 15 years, and authorities often talk about launching a 3,000-point index defense battle. In early February this year, the Chinese stock market experienced consecutive large declines, with even thousands of stocks hitting the limit down, indicating a lack of market confidence. What's even more peculiar is that some listed companies' insiders are advising investors to leave the stock market and let go of their attachment. On February 20th, the Chinese central bank once again lowered the key benchmark interest rate used to price mortgage loans. Subsequently, the mainland and Hong Kong stock market saw significant gains on February 21st. However, its duration is difficult to determine. Domestic and foreign investment banks believe that China is currently facing fundamental structural problems such as real estate prices and unemployment rates. If these issues are not resolved, the public outlook remains negative. Even with more money, people are reluctant to invest. In recent years, China's unemployment rate has soared. Waves of layoffs and salary cuts continue to hit, and the monthly income of ordinary people has sharply declined, making life difficult. So the question arises, why doesn't the CCP distribute cash to the people like the United States does? Bert Hoffman, director of the East Asian Institute at the National University of Singapore, once mentioned in an interview that Chinese households' cash benefits from the social security system make up only 7% of the country's gross domestic product, about a third of the ratio in the US and the European Union. However, in terms of specific measures aimed at expanding demand, no significant action has been taken. He said the main reason for not wanting to do this lies in ideology. Xi Jinping is resisting handouts to consumers, fearing they could lead to welfarism. Before joining the National University of Singapore, Bert Hoffman worked at the World Bank for 27 years, with 12 years dedicated to China-related work. He served as the World Bank Country Director for China from 2014 to 2019. Xi Jinping strongly opposes the Western-style idea of growth driven by consumer spending. He believes in maintaining fiscal discipline, especially considering China's heavy debt burden. This makes it unlikely for policies similar to those in the United States and Europe, such as stimulus or welfare policies, to be implemented in China. In 2022, Xi warned local governments in an article published in the CCP magazine, chose Xi not to overdo welfare to prevent the country from falling into the trap of welfarism that fosters laziness. Xi Jinping believes that rather than giving money to the people, resources should be allocated to state-owned sectors to promote economic growth more quickly and reliably. He believes that consumers are more unpredictable and less controllable than state-owned enterprises. Even if consumers have money, they may not necessarily spend more. These factors limit the options of the CCP government, making economic vitalization even more difficult. Regarding the unprecedented cash insurance by the People's Bank of China, senior American financial analyst He Bing analyzed that prices have not risen despite cash insurance because all businesses are struggling in general. Unemployment rates are soaring, there are many poor people, and demand is decreasing. So when people are afraid of unemployment, they inevitably increases savings, further deepening the liquidity trap. The liquidity trap grows deeper and deeper, trapping the economy in deflation. This economic downturn and deflation phenomenon indicates that the Chinese economy is beyond repair, and increasingly currency insurance is no longer effective. Some Chinese people also believe that deflation is coming much faster than imagined, indicating that the cash insurance is ineffective and that money needs to be distributed to the people quickly. However, at present, those economists completely fail to realize what consequences a slump in consumption can lead to. The core of addressing CPI lies in reversing income expectations, and the core of reversing income expectation lies in stabilizing employment. To stabilize employment, the first thing to do is to quickly repair relationships with major clients, secure orders, and not delay any further. Secondly, efforts must be made to improve the domestic business environment quickly. This is not a matter of local governments intensifying investment attraction, but rather the need to eliminate policies such as repushing supply and marketing cooperatives from the 1950s, encouraging youth to return to rural areas, introducing the anti-espionage law. Do they understand where people's hearts lie? With such a chaotic policies, can people not feel anxious? Recently, US-based economic analyst Yuan pointed out to foreign media that the CCP is desperately printing money in the belief that increasing the money supply can stimulate economic growth. But the biggest problem in China right now is actually the insufficient consumer purchasing power. One reason for this inadequate consumption is the significant decline in population. Fewer people naturally spend less. Another critical reason is that the government at all levels has been systematically siphoning off money that should have belonged to the ordinary people. As a result, the actual circulating currency, the money that should have been effective, is decreasing, inevitably leading to worsening deflation. In 2023, China denied that the economy was experiencing deflation, but the reality repeatedly proved that what China denies is usually true. Deflation is undoubtedly a result of economic decline. However, in reality, China's economy simply cannot adhere to the traditional Western economic framework, but rather use a unique economic model under the CCP's authoritarian control. Yuan analyzed that China has encountered a perplexing paradox. On one hand, the CCP is extensively printing money and issuing currency, which fits the definition of inflation. On the other hand, once these currency are released, they do not actually enter circulation in the real economy. Instead, they circulate within the financial system, leading to financial recycling. Within the system, there are also a large number of corrupt officials who are solely focused on maintaining their position and becoming rich themselves. Consequently, a portion of the newly issued currency is diverted through various means of officials at all levels within the party or interest groups that gets transferred to personal accounts. Furthermore, the newly issued RMB by the CCP is mainly through loans, and then these funds turn into deposits. In other words, the newly issued funds are mainly taken away by large state-owned enterprises such as central enterprises, public institutions, or local state-owned enterprises in the form of loans. However, after this money is taken away, it is not invested in places that can generate benefits because they are aware that there is no money to be made by investing it, so some simply save it and turn it into deposits. In fact, the excessive insurance of currency over the past period has all been allocated to the fiscal sector, directly managed and coordinated by the finance department. With local governments heavily indebted, the central bank prints money to support the government in debt to help them maintain operations. Even though there's liquidity, it's all being consumed by the continuously accumulating debt and hasn't entered the circulation market. Renowned Chinese financial commentator Lau Man recently released a video on his YouTube channel titled 2024 New Year's Greeting, The Anchorless Future of Printing Money. In the video, Lau Man explains, remember in the era where the RMB is anchored by debt, as long as there is a situation of borrowing without repayment in units of trillions, it marks the beginning of a time when money is printed without an anchor. In simpler terms, it means governments at all levels borrow money without having to repay it. The insurance of trillions of special government bonds last November went to subsidize local governments and to fill the bank holes of urban investment bonds. These funds don't need to be repaid by local governments, hinting at the concept of printing money without an anchor. It could be that the central bank directly subscribes to local government debt and then cancels it, or even more straightforwardly announces the forgiveness of local debts. Such operations would start from a scale of trillions and move to 5 trillion, 10 trillion, 50 trillion, 100 trillion, and eventually spiral out of control. However, if private enterprises and individuals don't repay money in China, they will be severely punished, and businesses and individuals will work tirelessly to repay their debts. As it stands, personal debt is already precarious, and people's incomes have sharply declined. Once the situation of printing money without an anchor begins, it will deteriorate rapidly, with values increasing exponentially. When it reaches 100 trillion, China will only have one option left: to close its doors under the pretext of external warfare, internally implement a major suppression mode, and firmly restrain the Chinese people domestically. This is the inevitable fate of the Chinese people. The problem China faces now are unsolvable and imminent. 2023 was already a struggle, and 2024 will be difficult to get by at all, which is inevitably will lead to an eruption of issues. Since 2015, the newborn population has plummeted for 7 consecutive years, to the point of being halved. The real estate bubble has completely burst. Foreign companies are collectively withdrawing. CCP remains obsessed with strict controls. Government debt is about to default on a massive scale. Urban and rural commercial banks are in a mess. Relationships with Europe, the United States, and Japan are deteriorating, and public opinion is increasingly worsening. Ultimately, all these critical problems are caused by the abuse of power and the consequences of top-down policies. To fix this, China can only change fundamentally, that is, to initiate political reforms, radically changing the power distribution and system. Surface-level adjustment won't work. However, imposing any restrictions on top-level power is simply impossible. There has never been a time in history when trying to control the highest authority without bloodshed and sacrifice has succeeded. So as long as the decision-making system of the power at the top remains unchanged, the Chinese people are destined to witness new records every month in the Year of the Dragon.